we're back again. More stuff at the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Hooray! I know I left you hanging with the last episode because we were just going through parts and things that are just laying around here. And to be honest with you, I really love going through these stuff. I mean, I was telling our poor camera guy here who's trying to hold the camera steady all this time. I could talk for days and days and days just going from one box to another because I would be reliving it myself. And there's parts all over the place here as we go along. But you know, I wanted to move a little further down here, and you know, look what I'm stepping over here. What is this? What is this? This is, now it's, of course it's upside down for you guys, so I'm going to lift it up a little bit. This is the backdrop inside to, can you see it now? It's Periscope. Periscope, the submarines would be going by. Now this is huge. You see how big this is, okay? It's almost as big as I. Notice I use the proper English, big as I. This game called Periscope was a humongous machine. They didn't make that many of them, again, because they were very, very large. And you would walk over to it, and look here, it's the lower front door. Can you see this? Oh my God. It's the Periscope front door as you're going into the submarine. And believe it or not, this actually opens. It's locked shut right now, but that's how you would service the machine. You'd open this front door and you'd crawl inside the machine to work on the mechanisms above. And this one came from the casino in Asbury Park, and it's not busted up and parted out. You have to take it apart piece by piece in order to move it, because you couldn't get it through a door at all. You couldn't budge it. I mean, so this thing is huge, and there's pieces of it here. So I was almost tripping on it to get back here. Then I see a nice little parts bin. What do I have? People ask me, do you have a fuse? Yeah, I got fuses, and they're all categorized in different things. But you know what? You got to find it. Yeah, you should mark them. Look, there's some micro switches. Little switches here, some typical cherry switches. The red ones are cherry switches. This is a coin switch. Coin switch is a little different. The wire's not attached to it, but I got a wire in there. Here it is. So this wire would go onto the switch, like so. And this would be bent at the right position at an angle to go through a cut in the metal. So when the coin came down, it would activate the switch. It would fall off the switch, and that's how you would start your game. So these little coin micro switches are very, very commonly used in arcade games of all types. And they do wear out, and they do break. So here's an extra one here, now with a wire attached to it. Uh-oh, uh-oh, MPU boards. Bally MPU boards. Another one there. Uh-oh. That's an Atari power board. What's this one? This one had a problem, but it was corrected. Look, somebody sold me this board. Only $95 for a used board. See that? They replaced the 5101. Well, guess what? They go bad all the time. Is the battery off this thing? Well, they replaced the battery, I say they, probably me, with a lithium. You see this battery here? This is a replacement. It has a lithium battery in it because the nickel card, you know, they would, rechargeable batteries would leak and they would corrode all the traces on the board that were connected to it. So this was changed to a lithium that doesn't leak. It has a 10-year life. It's probably sitting here more than 10 years, so I'll probably have to change the lithium board. Now, we get over and we cannot help but noticing what's behind all this stuff. What is all this stuff sitting on? It's sitting on pinball machines. And these are very, very special pinball machines because these are my first pinball machines. As a matter of fact, the first pinball machine I ever got is right here. Here he is. He's the Williams Alpine Club. You see him? And he's a wonderful machine, And he's got so much stuff on it. I don't even know if we can move the stuff to try to show you a little better under here. What do we have here sitting on top of him? These are heavy. What is, it's Marvin the Martian. Couple Marvin the Martian. Big stuffed animal Marvin the Martian. Everybody remembers Marvin the Martian. Well, as we get down further here, looking at my Alpine Club, you've got to move all this stuff. Here's some wooden, ow, I caught my finger in it. These are clamps for wood projects. You turn them and they squeeze, and I just squeezed my finger in it. Look, I got a little press mark there. This looks like it's from a, oh, if I'm not mistaken, that's a Papa Ball. Is that a Papa Ball? That was pretty sure that's the solid state version Papa Ball. I recognize it. Coastal, you know, with that extra board. I'm right. Papa Ball. You see that? I remember putting that there 28 years ago. Chains. More chains. Oh, it's a ponderous chain. A ponderous chain you drag through life, Ebenezer. I know what this is. Do you know what this is? Do you know? Do you know what it is? Geraldine, are you watching? Do you know what this is? Geraldine? Oh my gosh. Geraldine is my sister. And I'm gonna open this and show you. It's her suntan light. Back in the days when those high school girls wanted to look like they were suntan all year long, they would sit in their room in front of this UV scorching light that you had to wear little goggles with lenses that you couldn't see through unless you were, you know, like an arc welder on the thing, and you would get a tan from, look, the sun start and the sun heat, and you want heat only. I got your sunlight here, Geraldine. Oh my God. Another board. Is this one marked, I hope? Looks like an Atari. This is from the first solid-state game called Atarians. They had Middle Earth, they had Airborne Avengers, they had a whole series of wide-body machines that were made by Atari, and they really kind of came in and swept the pinball market because they were ahead of their time. Bally was first coming out with solid-state game with Evel Knievel and Knight Rider, which you could buy electromechanical or solid-state, and then 8-Ball. These were the early solid-state transitions from the late 70s. But Atari was already making solid-state pinballs, and whoever had them were doing very well with them, and they were wide bodies. And what was interesting is the score, which was digital, was not on the head. It was over on the playfield in the left corner. There was a scoring unit about so big with displays, and it would digitally give you your score. The head itself had nothing in it. The machine didn't even need a head. It was only a fluorescent light behind the glass lighting it up. All the mechanisms were in the body of the Atari pinball machines. And this board controlled it. Now, I'm going to, oh, wait a minute. Is he right again? Can you read? Pinball, Atari. So we have an Atari board here. So by deductive reasoning, Detective Columbo and Detective Kojak would have to agree that somewhere in the Randy archives we have Atari pinball machines. We do. Where they are, it's kind of like spinning the wheel. Round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. But we'll kind of put this over here with that other stuff because we're trying to get down to my lovely Alpine Club. I got to move my sister's suntan machine. Maybe if she finds out I got that, she'll be using it again. Oh, it's heavy. What could it be? Crescent wrenches! Hooray! Look at it, I never used it because none are missing. That's how you know if you use your crescent wrenches, there's always some missing because you never put them back. What's in this bag? Oh, this is not a heavy bag. What could be in here? Look at this. Empty cartons of cigarettes. This one's from Newport. Look, Marlboro Lights. More Newports. Look at this, it's filled with them. It's filled with empty cartons of cigarettes. Why? Cigarettes was a big prize back in the day when Kessel ran Fascination in Keensburg Amusement Park. Cigarettes were given away at all the games. They had cartons and cartons of cigarettes on display all over the walls. But they were empty because they weren't going to waste all those cigarettes getting there and getting stale. So they had empty cartons of cigarettes that were there as display. So obviously, we don't give cigarettes away anymore, so I saved the cartons. You have to save this stuff. This stuff is part of your history. It's the memories. It took me back 40 some odd years just by seeing those empty cigarette cartons. Do you have any? You should have saved them. Somebody must have given me a little Pac-Man machine. Oh, isn't he cute? This is a home version. And somebody had it and gave it to me, obviously, because if it was mine, it would not have had the label on the top pulled off here. We're getting down there. You can actually see Alpine Club. This is my Alpine Club pinball machine. It's made by Williams, and this is my very first pinball machine. It's such a special machine to me, and I haven't been able to play him in at least 20 years that he's been sitting in this position. And I can see that the rubber rings here are starting to recess. You see that? It's actually melted away on the edge of the flippers, and that's going to have to be pulled off, and it's probably going to stick to the metal. But these have the nice chrome flippers, the small 2-inch flippers, mind you. My plastics are still in good condition, but the rubbers are going to need replacing, and that's no big deal. There's a rubber broke right off the flippers. Another one is shrank over here. That's getting thin in the middle. So they've probably gotten hard over the years. Rubber doesn't last. But Alpine Club has a lot of really nice features. Now, you're talking back in the day. This is a 66, I believe, Alpine Club. And as you play this game, you have 2 sets of flippers. You have the lower sets, which are traditional, and you have your upper set of flippers on the top. So that when you push the right flipper button, both flippers go. When you push the left flipper button, both flippers go. So you have 2 sets of colored pop bumpers. You have the 2 green and the 2 red, and there's a button for each one. If you roll over the button, turns on the green bumpers. Roll over the button, turns on the red bumpers. And when they light up, it changes their score value. Typically, they would score 1 point. If you light them up, they score 10 points. When you lose the ball and it gives you a new ball, it will reset. You got to light them up again. What's really nice feature is back then they had certain things that you tried to learn about your game. And once you learned how to play the game, even in an arcade, it made the game more challenging and more fun. The big feature on Alpine Club was the mountain climber. You see the mountain in the back there? That's the Alpine Mountain. Now, if you can see very closely, I don't know how the camera will pick it up, but you see little shadows in the glass, like in the white. I can see it pretty easily with my eyes. Up there, you see the 2 different things. There are images that will light up when the bulb behind it lights up. That is a mountain guy climbing the mountain. He's the mountain climber. And he's trying to get from the bottom up the mountain, up to the very, very top. And if he gets to the top, he'll light up him standing there holding a flag. And then you'll get a free game, and he'll reset back down to the bottom. So you're trying to progressively advance your mountain climber up the mountain. Now, the chances of you getting that mountain climber up to the top of the mountain in a full cycle in one game are slim to none, because it's not easy to advance your mountain climber. This is something that you would do and learn to try to continue to put money into the machine and play the game. Of course, you got your free game for your score levels. You got your free game for your specials when lit. But the mountain climber was an extra special. And the way it worked was like this. Over here, you have D. Over here, you have E. On the top yellow bumper is A, B, C. And they would light up in rotation. So let's say it's starting at the beginning of reset. Mountain climber's down on the bottom, A is lit. So as you're playing, if you hit A advances to B. You hit B, it advances to C. you go down the lane of D, it advances to E, you go through E, the mountain climber advances one position going up the mountain. So that's a lot you got to do to advance that mountain climber. So many, many games would be played as the mountain climber would advance, and he would move up and stay in that position until he was advanced some more. It would not reset with a new game for a new player. So you could walk by Alpine Club in an arcade and you could see the mountain climber was up near the top and say to yourself, hey, you know what? Now's a good time to play Alpine Club because you can get that mountain climber the rest of the way and win that free game. Now, because you learned the game, you spent time to learn the game, you had that advantage and you had that connection with playing the game. Games back then had these special features and these themes. The machines today, it's a lot of garbage going on. Everything fast and whatever, lights and flashing, little monitor, TV screens, LCDs. It's nice, it's flashy, it's not intellectual fun. All right, because a lot of times you don't even know what's going on. They have features you can learn, sure. People are going to make an argument, oh, there's a lot of things you can learn, blah, 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 blah. It's not the same. It's not the same. The older games were for people who had patience to learn things and wanted to get to the achievement of it. That's the way it was. So you had your mountain climber feature. But typically you weren't playing the game just for your mountain climber feature. So you had other features that were easier. Here you see this line of buttons going all the way up to the top. Same significant idea where you're advancing up to the top. One of these buttons would be illuminated. If the ball rolled over the button when it was illuminated, it would advance to the next one. It would advance to the next one. Up, 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 up. When it got to the top, if you hit that target, it would light up. Now let me think about that. No. When you rolled over the top one, that's right. When you rolled over the top one and it was lit, it would then light up the target. And that target was then worth 300 points and opens down here the free ball gate. This would open up by one of those solenoids, and then if the ball went down here, you got the ball back again. You got a free ball, then the gate would close again. So you wanted to get that target lit. Now this was actually pretty good, because if you were a skillful player, if the light was, say, around the middle over here, you could get a shot with your flipper to get the ball to roll up the line, and it would go up in succession. So when this one would be lit and the ball would roll over it, then that one would light, the ball would roll over that, and all in the thing that would go up to the top. So it wasn't like you could do it in a slow period of time, which you could, but if you got a good shot, you could rise that right up to the top and hit that, get the 300 points, open the free game gate, and light your eject holes for 300 points. Normally they're 50 points. Then they would go to 300 points. Now you only needed, as this one was set, 2,500 points to win a free game. So to get 300 points just for that ball landing in that hole, that's pretty good. You know, do the math. You don't have to do that many times, and you're going to have a free game. So then if you advanced it again during the same game and hit the target, it would advance to 500 points for each hole. 5 times in a hole, you got the score. All right, then the next level I think was 3,600 and then 4,700. I'm using my memory because that's the way I remember it was set. Then if you did it again in the same game, it lit up special. And the specials alternated. Every time you hit a ones target, this one would light up, that one would light up, this one would light up. If you got the ball in the hole when special was lit, instant free game. And it would stay lit. The ball's still in play. You could get it in there again. Another free game, another free game. You could rack up free games on the Alpine Club. Now, I'm not saying everybody could do it so easily. But if you got to know your machine and your machine loved you, you got that connection, that bond with the machine. And you could do all these wonderful things. So Alpine Club was really special. Now my sister and I, because this was our first pinball, and we were kids, I was 11. We used to like to play together, but this is a single player machine. There's only one set of scores. Not all machines had the ability to play 2 players, 3 players where they'd alternate. This is a single player game. So what we would do is we would play flippers. I would hold one side, usually the right side. My sister would hold the left side. Sometimes we'd switch. And we would play together like a team. So if the ball was coming on the left side, my sister would hit it. If it was on the right side, I would hit it. We'd go back and forth. And we did this in arcades also, and it stretched our money. We got to play more games for the money we had to spend. We had a lot of fun. And also the bond together, the togetherness, the family togetherness. Now everybody's got to have their own. Well, You didn't back then. You shared and you had a good time and it was great. You could do it with your mother and father, play flippers. And it's a special fun thing because when you're playing alone, you know when you're going to hit it, and you can hit the second flipper to catch the ball with a double fling, flip, 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 flip. When you're playing with somebody else, they got to anticipate what you're going to do. So if you flip it, they got to flip it right behind you to catch that ball to give it that extra swing. And we could do that because we bonded, we together. So the Alpine Club was our very, very first game. Now my sister, she blamed me. She blamed me because I would hog the machine a lot of times if I was playing the machine and she came down and, you know, she felt like, oh, she's going to interfere with my thing. She wanted her own. So my mother says, well, okay, we'll get you one also. So now she's looking around. She wants one that's going to be as good as my Alpine Club with all those features. Not all pinballs had as many features. Well, this had the double flippers. So she's looking and she's spending a lot of time, and she didn't hurry into making a selection. After a year or so or more, she finally found one she liked called 7-Up, and also made by Williams just a couple years after this one. It was very similar. It had the two sets of flippers in the same positions. It had the ABCD advance, but instead of advancing a mountain climber going up the mountain, it advanced a skier coming down the mountain. It was super skier. How much did we pay for the Williams Alpine Club back in 1971? $125. I know all you collectors out there are like, money was different back then. My gosh, I mean, a loaf of bread was what, 10 cents, 15 cents, and $125. And the reason it was only $125, because most used pinballs that the arcades sold to homes were at that time $250, $350, $500. The reason this was only $125 was the back glass was severely cracked. It was cracked going all the way over this way and all down this way. It was in at least 3 large pieces. It wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but for an operator, it would be very difficult for them to run that game on a location, because if people abuse the machine and they shake it hard, the glass could fall out of the frame being broken, and it could break and cut somebody with sharp glass. So they sold the machine to home use, and they sold it for $125 so somebody would buy it, and that's what I was able to get my father to spend. And it was a combined birthday, Christmas, Easter special gift, you know, combining all the money, because that was a lot of money back then. So we bought the Alpine Club, and it came from S&S Amusements. He still has his decal from S&S Amusements in Lakewood, New Jersey. It's listed as Tom's River, but their location was actually in Lakewood, or just over the line. They sold us the first pinball machine. And when my father got it home, actually it sat in the car for a long period of time, because we bought it in the summer, and the head came off and the legs were off, and it's sitting in the back of the station wagon. And every day while we were still on vacation, I'd look in at the pinball machine in the car, and I couldn't wait to play it. And I'd, open the back of the car and open the front door, peek in. So when we went back home after the summer and we brought the pinball machine in, it was time to put it together. Well, I didn't know anything about putting a pinball machine together, and my father, he wasn't mechanically inclined, so he had to figure it out, and we put the legs on, then we put the head on, and there's some big connectors with many, many connections on it that have to slip in together, plug connections. They call them Jones plugs, but they have to slip in to make the connections of the cables from the top to the bottom. One of them was broken and didn't make proper connection when my father put it together. So when you played the machine, something was going to be affected because something was not making connection. And in this instance, the effect was not major. The effect was the 1-point scoring would not register. Anything you hit 1 would function, the bumper would hit, but you didn't get any score for it. So my father called up the place that sold it to us, and he asked, is there anything he can do with it? And they were so nice that they said, we'll find somebody in your area who can come fix your machine. So they made a connection with a man who worked for Runyon Now, I don't know if anybody out there's been in the business long enough to remember Runyon Sales on Route 22 in Springfield, which wasn't far because we lived in Short Hills. Runyon was a big distributor, big-time distributor back in the day, and rumor has it very well connected. So, you know, if you were dealing with Runyon, you were dealing with the right people, as all these games were back in the days. So Runyon made a connection with S&S Amusements and had a man who was working for them as a mechanic come over to fix the machine at our house. His name was Harry Garbo. And I have no idea whatever happened to Harry, but he was the start. And Harry came over to fix the machine, and he fixed the problem. And he couldn't repair the plug, but he was able to kind of jump it so it was just going to hold on enough that it was going to work, and it worked fine. And of course, the most important part was Harry, when he was done, gave my father his business card. So when the machine breaks again, you can call Harry to come over and fix the machine. No charge. For a strip, S&S picked up the tab. Very nice, selling a machine for $125, and they paid somebody to come and fix it. Can you imagine? Such service back then. Really nice people. Well, didn't take too long before the machine broke again. So, of course, who do you call? Harry Garbo. Harry was happy to come over after work and work on the machine. This time, $50 service charge. Well, if you could get somebody to come fix your machine today for $50, you'd be really, really thrilled, because that's nothing. That's nothing today. You can't go to dinner. Okay, well, fine, my parents are happy, the kids are happy again playing the pinball machine. It's a machine. It's going to break again. And it broke again. Another $50 for Harry. Well, a few more $50 to Harry. Now you've already paid Harry more than you paid for the machine. This is what people don't understand when they want to buy a machine for home. Even if you buy a brand new machine, it's going to break. It's a machine. After my father spent a number of $50 to fix the machine, he finally said the next time that machine breaks, it stays broke. He's not fixing, he's not spending more money on the machine. Well, sure enough, something broke. What broke? Well, as I remember, it was the free ball return gate. Well, the gate would open and shut again. The gate would open and shut again. It wouldn't stay open for the ball. Well, it's not the end of the world. You can still play the machine. How many times do you open the gate? But that bothered me. That gate. That's part of the play. You're trying to get, and now the gate, I mean, this is a big thing to a kid. The gate isn't staying open. So I had to find a way to fix the gate. So I had watched the guys fixing the machines in the arcade when I was a kid. You open the machine, you slide the glass off, you try not to break the glass, you lift the top. It's very, very, your parents all your life told you don't touch wires, you're going to get a shock. Here we are filled with wires. I found the problem and I fixed the gate. Well, I was thrilled. And of course I was showing my parents, look, I fixed the gate. And they were like, I can't believe it, the kid fixed the gate, this and the other. So it gave me a little more confidence. Next thing that broke was the left flippers. Now this was a big one. You push the button, both flippers would not move. Now that's serious. I mean, you can play the game with a gate that doesn't open once in a while. You can't play the game with the whole left side of flippers off. I mean, how do you play pinball with one flipper working? So that was a problem. And it wasn't that complicated, but it was something, I had no parts. I mean, you see here, parts everywhere. I had none. So what had happened was one of those switches, like I showed you inside of those score dials that turn around, it's simply two pieces of metal that touch together, okay? One of them broke off. So when you push the flipper button and it moved in, there was nothing for it to touch because it broke, it was gone. Couldn't make the connection. Simple, but how do you fix that? Well, you have to put a new contact blade in there. It's a stack. You can take it apart, you can get a new one in there. And they're made to do that with holes that are cut in the copper and points that'll touch at the right spots. They come in different sizes. I had none. So what am I supposed to do? Well, I had to figure something. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I got myself a piece of wire, you know, any kind of wire. Take a piece of wire from an old lamp. And I cut the wire, and I cut the bottom of the wire, and I bared that, and I wrapped that around the connection on the bottom of the contacts that were broken off. I wrapped it around. I didn't have solder, I didn't have anything. I just kind of wrapped it around, kind of twisted it. And I left it insulated, and up at the top, I bared a little piece of it at the top, just the right size, and stuck it in there, and put Scotch tape around the two, the good switch and the other one, just so that when you pushed the flipper button in and moved the contact, the point on the good contact would touch the bared piece of wire. And in so doing, you made yourself a switch that then worked and operated the flippers. Now, of course, the downside of it is that the arc of the current for two flipper solenoids, not just one, two, because there's two on this machine run by one switch, is rather substantial, and there's a spark that comes along with it. So the contacts had points that were rated for that kind of amperage sparking without melting. Piece of wire isn't. So as you would spark into touching that piece of wire, eventually, and not too long, that contact from the one contact blade would arc onto the bared piece of wire, and it would just weld itself with a tiny little weld right onto the wire, holding the flippers on. So obviously now the game is out again, and if you leave it on there for an extended period of time, you will burn the flipper coils, even though the flipper coils have a secondary winding, so when they're up position, it lowers the amperage pull onto a second winding so it doesn't burn up. But it's still not to be meant to be held up continuously. So I would have to open the machine. Of course, it was near the front opening. I didn't have to take it all apart. I knew what it was. I could stick my hand in there and kind of flick it until I got the wire to break free, and it would be good again until it happened again. So this is the way we played it for a long period of time. He was limping with a crutch and a Band-Aid, and it worked, and I was still happy to work. And then something else broke, and I forget what it was that broke, but this time I wasn't able to figure it out easily. So my parents said, all right, let's call Harry. So Harry came, and Harry fixed the problem. I forget what it was. I think maybe it was a score reel or something like that that needed a part that, again, I wouldn't have had. So I showed Harry while I was here. I says, you want to see how I fixed my flipper? So Harry's like, sure. So I showed him how I fixed the flipper. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe this kid figured out some way to make this work with a piece of wire. So he was really, really impressed, and he went into his little toolbox and he gave me a small handful of contact blades from old machines, and he says, here's some parts, see if you can fix it right. So I was thrilled that I had the parts, and of course I got right on that, and I replaced my little piece of wire and my Scotch tape with a new contact, and the machine worked fine. And it's probably still got that same contact in there today because they don't break that often. So that was my foray into becoming a very good technician, because I learned by fixing the machines out of necessity. Then when my sister finally got her 7-Up pinball machine and it broke, of course, I would get to work on that one. And I'd learn a little bit more about the differences in the way one machine worked as compared to the other machine worked. And because they were the same manufacturer, a lot of things were similar, some things were different. I was able to determine what was different, the reasons for it, and I learned. Then we got a rifle machine, then we got a jukebox, then it was a shuffle machine, and the list grew and went on until eventually I had a basement full of machines. But it all started with the Alpine Club, and here he is. So I figured we'd share that with you today, and we're going to stop the video here because we're going to go down just a little bit further and give you just an idea where things led to after Alpine Club. So we'll ask you to hit the subscribe button and tell everybody to join us here on the next episode of the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Thanks. See you next time.